Hello there Scapers, my name is Zenevilius and welcome to the second part of my analysis on the two new Skillvention methods that were released on Monday. And this video will focus on what's the best strategy to train Invention using these Skillvention methods. And the three strategies I'm going to consider are disassembly of crystal tools at level 10, disassembly of omatics at level 10, and siphoning of crystal tools at level 12. This video has been inspired by some of your comments in the previous video. So, in the last video, I discussed the different perks you can get, what the best combinations for it, what the best perks are, and finally I compared the two different types of tools you can make, the omatics and the crystal tools. Now thanks to you guys for pointing out that my analysis, well not my analysis, but my comparison between siphoning of crystal tools and disassembly of the omatics was kind of flawed, and I absolutely agree with you. So first of all, thanks to Usher for pointing out that disassembling crystal tools gives you faceted components. So that's basically a free way of getting enhanced devoted 3. Second of all, Rouge also pointed out that you can actually make crystal tool siphons from the crystal parts that you get from dismantling the crystal tools. Too many crystals here, guys. I'm sorry. I didn't think of the fact that they give crystal parts and the fact that you can actually make crystal tool siphons using that. So in this video, I'm going to clear that up and redo that analysis. So first of all, how do you factor in the calculations for the fact that you get crystal parts from disassembling crystal tools? Well, if you disassemble any item at level 9 or above, you get quadruple the normal number of components. Normally you would get 0, 1, 2 or 3 crystal parts from any crystal tools, but by disassembling it at level 10, which is what you would do for a normal invention training, you're basically going to get either 0, 4, 8 or 12. And in fact, I've disassembled a couple of these so far. I've got 4 and 8, which averages us out nicely to 6, and you also get one faceted component, which quadrupled equals 4. So if we average this out and we factor it in, you get 6 crystal components per crystal tool. You still need to spend around 270k on the tool seed and around 200k on the augmenter. By the way, the augmenter estimate is a bit optimistic. It's probably going to cost you more than 200k per augmenter, but there it is anyways. It's just a rough calculation. For the crystal tool siphon, you will need to actually use up 10 crystal parts and 5 imbued components, and it's around 1300k. So that's how much you'll be making by selling it off. Remember though that you actually need to unlock the blueprint for this from the Waika reward shop for 5k chimes and 5 Daijitu, and you need 54 invention to make it as well. But anyway, if you actually scale this up, you need around 1.67 crystal tools to get 10 crystal parts on average, and you need imbued components. Now this is quite tricky because for this you actually need to spend some time dismantling wands and staves. So for each crystal tool siphon you want to make, you will need to dismantle some wands and staves. In fact, I think one of the best methods is to dismantle normal staffs, and in the small test that I did, I got 5 imbued components in 120k's worth of staffs, so that's around 70 or 80 staffs, something like that. So if you do the maths with this simple calculation, it turns out that you can make a crystal tool siphon every 1.7 disassemblies, and you make a 400k profit, which is pretty substantial if you think about it. You do need to expend a bit more time because you will need to dismantle the wands and staves like I said, and you will actually need to make these tool siphons as you get the crystal parts, or just make them all at the end and make back all your money. And now if we compare the 3 different methods, so either siphoning your crystal tools, disassembling your omatics, or disassembling your crystal tools, then here are the numbers from 22 to 120 invention. So siphoning obviously is the slowest method, around a third slower than the other 2 methods, and also extremely expensive, 188 mil GP spent. So there is that you need to contend with. And now for disassembling omatics, it's going to cost you 45 mil GP because you're not going to be able to make back any of your money that you spend on making these omatics, and you also need a bunch of components, a huge number in fact. So that's going to be some long hours spent disassembling random items and at the bench making these guys. But the good thing is you don't need an augmenter, unlike for the crystal tools, so you just make these guys, put the perks on and go. The only reason you might want to do this method rather than disassembling crystal tools is if you're an Iron Man and you don't have access to the Elf City, because I don't think there is any way that you can get the crystal tool seeds. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there is, unless you have access to Prifdines. So until that point, you will have to make these and use these. And in fact, it's not a bad idea because pretty much have the same perks as the crystal tools, except for the fact that the crystal tools have these little extra perks, such as being able to spawn extra divine spirits while fire making, or smithing quicker or something like that. And finally, we have the disassembly of the crystal tools. So like I mentioned, you will actually make a 400k-ish profit per tool with this method. Remember that in this calculation, I have not considered lots of different variables, like, perking up your stuff, using the Enlighten 3 perk to speed things up, using the efficient perk or the charge drain reduction to reduce the number of divine charges you use, which incidentally isn't that much anyway. For siphoning, it will cost you 15 mil without any reductions, and for disassembly, it will only cost you 10 mil from 22 to 120 invention. So I haven't considered that. But anyway, the problem with crystal tool disassembly is that you need to collect so many more components. Well, not so many more, you do need to collect a lot more components than any other method. So that involves actually spending a lot of time away from Skillvention. And if you think about, whether that is actually time efficient, it's very hard to calculate it because there are so many variables there. But because you'll be spending extra time disassembling stuff, that may be something you might want to factor in to your calculations. And one of the reasons I compared siphoning crystal items versus disassembling rodomatic items in the previous video was keeping in mind the kind of people such as myself who don't like to do this, who don't like to spend tens of hours just disassembling stuff so that they can make enough augmenters, so that they can eventually make enough profit, as with the crystal tool method I've just mentioned. So there are people like that out there who don't want to do that. They just want to spend time doing Skillvention, and for those kinds of people, even though they're going to be getting around a third less invention XP per hour, they're still happy to use a crystal tool siphon and siphon at level 12, or even a normal siphon for that matter, because it is much cheaper. So that's why I was even considering that scenario in the previous video. And yeah, there are lots of pros and cons to each method, as I've just been talking about. But overall, yes, disassembling crystal tools is the best method by far, as long as you're willing to spend that huge amount of time away from the bench disassembling a ton of items, or using the scavenging perk while you're slaying to collect those items automatically on your way to 99 or 120 Slayer. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope that helped you out in making your decision as to which strategy you should employ between the 3 different options for fire making vention and smithvention. So in the next video, I'm going to go into the details of exactly what the XP rates are and what the best training strategies are, especially with double XP weekend coming up. And you can get some pretty insane XP rates for Skillvention with the release of these 2 new invention skills. So I hope you look forward to that. And yeah, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.